After being betrothed to the great villain Xiao Cheng, I thought I could control him with the love brain system I carried. Little did I know my system was fake, while his mind-reading ability was real. For over a decade since transmigrating into this book, I've been lying low for just as long. Thanks to my deliberate low profile, life has been quite comfortable. Unexpectedly, the old emperor, on a whim, arranged my marriage to the second prince, the great villain of the book, Xiao Cheng. He is both talented and handsome, with extraordinary strategic skills, yet he is merely a whetstone arranged by the emperor for the crown prince. The more he contends with the crown prince, the faster he hastens his own demise, and I am to marry him. The whole family rejoices, my parents even shedding tears of joy. They marveled at how I, a young lady who would rather lie down than sit than stand, and had no proficiency in any of the 4 arts of zither, chess, calligraphy, or painting, essentially a good-for-nothing, had finally managed to get married, and even had the incredible luck to marry well. They had no idea how worried I was. Marrying any other man would have meant stepping into the grave of matrimony, shackled by its chains. But marrying Xiao Cheng, that was truly stepping into a grave. I lean on my chin by the window, watching the clouds gather and drift in the sky. System, besides selling love addiction pills, do you have any other functions? I ask again. Unwilling to give up. System, dear master, you've been asking for over a decade. Even if you're not tired of it, I'm tired of answering. My heart is dead. This useless system. Back when I first transmigrated into the book and discovered I had a system with me, I thought I was destined for great things here. But I never expected this worthless system only produces love-addled divine pills, as the name suggests. Whoever consumes this divine pill will become utterly devoted to the first person they see, turning into a love-struck fool. My mind raced. Feeding Xiao Cheng a love-struck divine pill wasn't entirely out of the question. With a love-struck mind, a little pillow talk could convince him not to compete with the crown prince, and his life would be spared. I'm such a genius, excitedly slapping the table. System, give me a love brain elixir. I've tested the effects of this elixir when I was young. My father was infatuated with a courtesan outside and actually wanted to redeem her. As a civil official, if he did such a thing, he would be criticized. My mother was so anxious that blisters formed at the corners of her mouth. He may not like me, but he cannot tarnish the reputation of the Ministry of Personnel and affect my son's future marriage prospects. At that time, I was only 3 years old and thought my mother was worrying too far ahead. Coincidentally, I wanted to test the divine elixir produced by the useless system. When my father returned to the mansion, I added it to his tea and made him drink it. Then they locked my father and mother in the room. By the time the two of them opened the door again, my father's eyes were glued to my mother, and that so-called courtesan was long forgotten. The love-addled divine pill from the system was truly extraordinary, fast-acting and long-lasting. My parents have had a very strong relationship for over a decade, giving me 3 younger brothers in just 5 years. The 2 of them were deeply in love, and their story became a beautiful tale in the capital, envied by many. But I've never even met Xiao Cheng, so how could I possibly feed him the divine pill? At this thought, I lost heart and slumped back onto the table. I never thought I'd get to see Xiao Cheng, but to my surprise, he actually asked to meet me, on the top floor of Yipin Tower. I sat face to face with Xiao Cheng. As the legitimate daughter of the minister's residence, I maintained a dignified posture and impeccable etiquette. Xiao Cheng truly lived up to the rumors of being as handsome as Panan, his dark robes accentuating his jade-like complexion. This appearance, I liked it. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was screaming wildly. Xiao Cheng personally poured a cup of tea and handed it to me. Try it, it's this year's new harvest. I thanked him. Calmly accepted the tea, and let my gaze subtly sweep over his hand, long, with distinct knuckles. It was a beautiful hand. My heart leaped with joy. I nodded gently and spoke softly. Indeed, this is fine tea. Truth be told, I didn't understand a thing, over all these years. Despite my efforts to integrate into this ancient world, I had failed to master any of the refined arts: music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, wine, or tea, every day. I would hole up in my own courtyard reading storybooks, and occasionally I even wrote a bit about the love between two men. As for drinking tea, for me, it's like a cow drinking water. I don't appreciate the finer points. A smile spread across Xiao Cheng's lips, and in an instant, his entire face lit up, making the whole room seem to glow. My pupils dilated, and I couldn't help but feel my heart flutter. My heart was screaming wildly, "Oh my God! To die under the peony is to be a ghost of romance." The ancients truly did not deceive me. On the surface, I maintained a calm and indifferent demeanor. "You and I are to be married soon, Your Highness." Xiao Cheng took a sip of tea and continued, "I would like to ask if Miss Lin is willing to marry me." Xiao Cheng's voice was cool and magnetic, making my heart flutter with distraction, yet his question left me at a loss for how to respond. After a moment's thought, I replied in a measured tone. "The prince and I were betrothed by His Majesty's decree. I am deeply grateful and naturally willing. If you have someone you truly care for, I certainly have ways to annul the engagement." My goodness, as expected of the great villain, he even dared to refuse a marriage arranged by the emperor just like that. I shook my head, feeling rather anxious. "No, I have no one I admire. I spend all my time in the inner chambers and hardly ever see any men." Xiao Cheng's smile grew wider and wider, and I could almost feel his joy. "That's good." The guard came in and gave Xiao Cheng a message. He glanced at me and said, "Miss Lin, my apologies. I need to attend to some official business." With that, he left the private room with his subordinates. Gazing at the cup on the table, I fell into deep thought. This was a perfect opportunity. "System, quick, give me a love-addled brain divine pill." When Xiao Cheng returned, my hands hidden under the table were still trembling. I found an excuse to send away the maids and guards by my side. Xiao Cheng looked at me with confusion. "Miss Lin, what is it you wish to discuss with me?" I stammered for a long moment. You should have some water first. Let me gather my thoughts." Xiao Cheng picked up the teacup, while I guiltily let my eyes dart around. I couldn't tell if it was just my imagination, but it seemed he hesitated for a moment before downing the tea in one gulp. "It's all gone. Probably got thirsty from talking too much outside." I was ecstatic inside. No matter what, the big villain had already swallowed the love-addled divine pill. I stared at him without moving a muscle. For a long while, there was not the slightest change. My heart sank. "System, is this medicine of yours expired?" I was puzzled. "System, impossible. It has a shelf life of 100 years. Then this must be fake medicine. Look, Xiao Cheng hasn't changed at all." "System, impossible. Products from this system are genuine and trustworthy for all." A conflicted expression appeared on my face. Xiao Cheng furrowed his brows. "Miss Lin, can you speak now?" I pursed my lips, deflating in an instant, utterly wilted. "Your Highness, this humble subject thinks you are as handsome as Panan." After a long while, I finally managed to squeeze out a sincere remark. Xiao Cheng smiled, reached out his hand to rest on top of my head, and patted it gently. You. The tone was both doting and helpless. My eyes lit up. This was a success, right? Xiao Cheng's gaze was sharp, resting unabashedly on my face. "Since you're willing to marry me, I'll have the imperial astronomers pick the nearest auspicious date. The sooner I marry you, the sooner I can rest easy." I was screaming inside. "System, I misunderstood you. This medicine of yours is really, truly real." I looked up at Xiao Cheng, his gaze deep and profound, as if he wanted to devour me whole. I couldn't help but shrink back. Xiao Cheng's expression instantly froze, the smile at the corner of his mouth vanishing without a trace. Even his tone grew several degrees colder. "You don't want to?" I quickly shook my head. "Your Highness, just make the arrangements as you see fit." As I said this, my face grew warm. I was truly blushing now. Xiao Cheng laughed heartily, his magnetic voice ringing out above my head. I stole a glance at him with my eyes, only catching sight of his Adam's apple bobbing utterly seductive. Back at the estate, I gleefully rolled around on the bed. "System, did you see that? Xiao Cheng is absolutely top tier. System, show some restraint. You useless system. Useless for over a decade, finally showing some use. System, be a good person. Speak properly." I ignored the system. The maid announced that my mother had entered the courtyard, and I hurriedly straightened my clothes. All right. Mother knows perfectly well how you usually are. My mother walked briskly, and when she saw my appearance, she looked utterly disdainful. Seeing you so radiant, smiling like a peach blossom, you must be quite satisfied with the prince. I nodded. Mother, the prince is truly handsome. Is this your first time seeing the prince? I thought for a moment, then nodded. Mother said in a tone of exasperation, every time there's a banquet, you either decline or just focus on eating. I retorted. Mother, you know very well that your daughter has no talents to speak of. My mother let out a deep sigh. The prince has sent word that he has chosen a date, and it's next month. I thought the wedding would at least be next year, but I never expected the prince to be in such a hurry. My mother's gaze fell on my stomach. You and the prince haven't done that, have you? I understood instantly. Oh, my dear mother, how would I dare? We are completely innocent. Perhaps your daughter is just too charming, I added in my mind. That's the power of the love-addled brain elixir. The days passed neither too quickly nor too slowly, and soon it was the day of my wedding to Xiao Cheng. There was a whole heap of tedious formalities, and after the wedding ceremony, I was so exhausted I wanted to just collapse on the bed in a starfish pose, but I still sat upright on the edge of the bed, waiting for Xiao Cheng. I thought it would be late into the night. But unexpectedly, Xiao Cheng came in after just a short while. He lifted the bridal veil. I could clearly sense a flash of admiration in his eyes. I felt a secret pride in my heart. Though I may lack talent, this face of mine does have a certain charm. However, it's nothing compared to Xiao Cheng. Today, dressed in his wedding attire, the red fabric set off his porcelain white skin, making him look like an enchanting spirit. I couldn't take my eyes off him. Xiao Cheng chuckled softly, satisfied. I nodded, realizing what had happened. My face instantly flushed bright red. Xiao Cheng poured 2 glasses of wine and handed one to me. We linked arms and drank. With this nuptial wine, from this day forward, we are united as husband and wife, sharing one heart until our hair turns white. Xiao Cheng held me close, whispering softly in my ear. The warmth of his breath brushed against my skin, tickling me. I couldn't help but shy away. He held me even tighter. Where do you think you're going? A magnetic voice, warm skin, and I melted completely, like a puddle of water. Xiao Cheng's hand gently glided from the top of my head to the ends of my hair, from my neck down to my back. I clung to Xiao Cheng, breathing rapidly, too shy to speak. Xiao Cheng's lips pressed against my ear. Ching ching. What did you put in my teacup that day at Yipin Tower? Instantly, I felt as if I had plunged into an icy abyss. I forced a stiff smile, my words stumbling out haltingly. Your Highness, that day. You knew I had put something in your tea. Xiao Cheng stepped back, his gaze fixed on me, his face expressionless, his eyes dark and unreadable. I only felt a chill rising up my spine. System, I'm going to die. My mind raced, thinking of how to explain, so anxious that my palms broke out in sweat. Xiao Cheng laughed out loud, reaching out to flick my forehead. Did I scare you? In an instant, the solemn and tense atmosphere vanished. I let out a sigh of relief, pursed my lips, and said hesitantly, since you knew there was something in it, why did you still drink it? Xiao Cheng leaned in close to me, planting a light kiss on my lips. Even if it were arsenic, I'd gladly take it. My heart pounded like a drum, and I froze in place. Is this the power of the love-addled brain elixir? But something doesn't seem quite right. Xiao Cheng's kiss landed at the corner of my lips, his hands resting on my waist. Tonight is our wedding night. Ching ching, don't let your mind wander. All night long, I didn't have time to think too much. I was too exhausted to move, and as the sky grew bright, the time for serving tea was approaching. Xiao Cheng's arm was wrapped around my waist, his gaze fixed intently on my face, like a lurking beast. My legs were trembling. Xiao Cheng sighed. Forget it. I'll let you off for now. I gritted my teeth. Look at you. Is that even human language you're speaking? If we miss the tea-serving ceremony, I'll be the one to blame. Xiao Cheng smiled at the corner of his mouth. It's fine. Mother Consort has repeatedly reminded me that heirs are the priority. Everything else is unimportant. Even so, I still trembled as I stood up and, together with Xiao Cheng, paid our respects to the consort dowager. The consort dowager looked kindly, taking my hand and saying repeatedly, "Good, good, good. No wonder Chenga likes you." My face flushed with shyness. "No way, Xiao Cheng, you've been telling everyone you have feelings for me." More than a month of shameless days passed, during which Xiao Cheng never brought up the incident at Yipin Tower again. I wanted to talk to him about it several times, but I didn't dare. In this era, having a system on you would probably be seen as something strange. Xiao Cheng sensed my worries and whispered in my ear one late night, "Ching, you don't need to overthink things. Some matters, you can speak of them if you wish, and keep them to yourself if you prefer not to. Similarly, some things, you can do them if you want, and leave them be if you don't. After all, I'll be here to support you no matter what." I was deeply moved, with the crisp autumn air and clear skies. The autumn hunt was approaching. I shut myself in my room, racking my brains. Before transmigrating into the book, I hadn't paid much attention to these plot details, focusing only on the romantic scenes between the male lead, the crown prince, and the female lead. But I remember the autumn hunt as a highlight. On that day, the great villain Xiao Cheng would arrange an ambush to assassinate the crown prince, but the clever female lead would expose him. The emperor would then banish him to guard the southern border, where he would later die. If Xiao Cheng goes to the southern border, I must go too. If he dies, I must die as well. At this thought, my chest felt tight and uncomfortable. Scratching my head, I grew restless and uneasy. After court, Xiao Cheng went straight to his study. These past few days, he has often been discussing matters with his advisors in the study. I suspect it concerns the many arrangements for the autumn hunt. At night, he quietly lies beside me, holding me close. I turned over, nestling into his embrace, and gently nuzzled against him. Xiao Cheng chuckled with delight. "Why aren't you asleep yet? Were you waiting for your husband on purpose?" His hand caressed my waist. In the past, I would have surrendered long ago, but today, with something weighing on my mind, I had no inclination at all. I reached out and wrapped my arms around his waist. "What has my husband been busy with lately?" Xiao Cheng reached out and tapped the tip of my nose, teasing with a smile. "Are you blaming me for being too busy and not spending time with you?" My mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. I wanted to be straightforward with Xiao Cheng, yet I feared he might think I had ulterior motives. I hesitated back and forth, feeling that no matter what I did, it would be wrong. I could only mumble into his embrace, After thinking for a moment, I still spoke up. "Did His Majesty assign you to oversee the autumn hunt? Could you?" I looked up at Xiao Cheng. "Could you not do those things?" Xiao Cheng's hand paused, a flicker of depth passing through his eyes. "My heart is uneasy." After all, Xiao Cheng is the great villain in the book, with deep and intricate thoughts. Although we have been in harmony these past days, we have never truly opened up to each other. Our relationship remains only on the surface. I don't want to die, nor do I want Xiao Cheng to die. After a moment's thought, I added, "I only wish for us both to live safely until our hair turns white." A flicker of delight passed through Xiao Cheng's eyes as he gently stroked my head. Suddenly, he sighed softly, "Ching, I value my life more than anyone, but there are some things I must do." He left a kiss on my forehead. "What I'm doing is exactly what you think. You have to believe me." Xiao Cheng's words left me unable to guess or understand. What I wanted most was for him not to get involved in the prince's power struggle, but I couldn't bring myself to say it. He covered my mouth. "Be good, don't overthink it. My woman only needs to do whatever she wants without a care in the world. I'll handle everything." I never even considered that position. I stared at Xiao Cheng in disbelief, my eyes wide. He understood. Xiao Cheng blinked, pointed to his own ear, his eyes full of mischief. "Whatever you're thinking. I can hear it all right here." Now I was truly stunned, my heart pounding with nervousness. This wasn't entirely impossible in Blue Star novels. Many male and female protagonists had mind-reading abilities. My face flushed red. Oh my God. Then all those times I fantasized about Xiao Cheng in my mind. He must have heard every single thought clearly. I felt like I wanted to die. I buried my face into Xiao Cheng's embrace. Xiao Cheng chuckled. "Just teasing you, Ching. Being so shy, are you feeling guilty? You must think of me often." don't you?" With that, he rolled over. The autumn hunt had arrived. The sky was just beginning to lighten, with the first faint glimmers of dawn, as we set off by carriage toward the royal hunting grounds in the outskirts. From a distance, I spotted the male lead, the crown prince, and the female lead. True to their reputation as outstanding figures among men, they stood out in the crowd like cranes among chickens. Xiao Cheng held a book in one hand and sipped tea with the other. Noticing me leaning out the window and gazing intently, he asked calmly, "What are you looking at?" "Ching, the crown prince." Without a second thought, I answered quickly. After speaking, I felt something was off and grew a bit awkward. Sure enough, I noticed Xiao Cheng's expression darkening slightly. "Is the crown prince more handsome, or am I?" I gave an embarrassed smile. "Of course, my husband is more handsome." After speaking, she straightened her chest and adjusted to a more perfect sitting posture. "I was merely curious about the crown prince. What I'm even more curious about is the wonderful story between the crown prince and Yi Qianna, the most talented woman in the capital." A teasing smile appeared on Xiao Cheng's face. "Just speak as you normally would. No need to put on such a serious expression. I prefer your usual lazy and carefree demeanor. Just be yourself." My heart itched with curiosity. This Xiao Cheng always seemed to understand me so well, but I had never met him before, let alone spent time with him. Xiao Cheng looked up, his expression nostalgic. "Speaking of which, I saw you when I was a child. Back then, you also put on the proper demeanor of a legitimate daughter in front of outsiders. Flawless in every way, but in private, you were mischievous and clever." I pointed a trembling finger at Xiao Cheng. "Do you really have some kind of mind-reading ability?" Xiao Cheng smiled without saying a word. Just then, the royal hunting grounds arrived, and everyone began to enter one after another. The autumn hunt soon began, with the crown prince, Xiao Cheng, and the various ministers scattering in all directions. The emperor, now advanced in years, no longer participated. Instead, holding his newly favored consort as he drank from the high platform, I kept my head down, nibbling on fruit in small bites, trying to make myself as inconspicuous as possible. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling of a probing gaze fixed on me, sending a chill down my spine. I thought to myself, I've never made friends with anyone, let alone made enemies. Suddenly it occurred to me that at this moment, I no longer represented the legitimate daughter of the minister's residence, but the princess consort of Xiaocheng. He has enemies. Even the sweetest fruits tasted as bland as chewing wax. Suddenly, from deep within the hunting grounds came the loud cry of a guard. "Assassin! The crown prince has been attacked." I was so startled that the fruit in my hand fell, and my whole body trembled. Xiao Cheng has finally made a move against the crown prince. The crown prince was helped back by Xiao Cheng, having only suffered a fright with no serious injuries. However, today, all the people he brought with him, the guards who were protecting him, are dead. Your Majesty was furious, throwing a wine cup in front of Xiao Cheng. "Second brother, I entrusted the autumn hunt to you, and now such a major oversight has occurred. You cannot escape responsibility for this." Some members of the Crown Prince's faction claimed it was a deliberate setup, their words directly pointing to Xiao Cheng. The female lead cleverly uncovered evidence. The leader of the assassins carried a faint trace of incense, unique to the second prince, Xiao Cheng. The emperor was furious, stripped Xiao Cheng of his actual power, and exiled him to guard the southern border, with his family and attendants accompanying him. Everything unfolded just as it did in the novel. I straightened my back, not letting anyone see a trace of fear. Xiao Cheng offered no defense, only kowtowed in gratitude. With the dust settled, the female lead suddenly flashed me a triumphant smile. "She's just got a screw loose." The next day, after packing our bags lightly, we set off for the southern border. At the 100-mile pavilion on the outskirts of the city, an unexpected person was waiting for us. It was the female lead, Yi Qianna. Wearing a hat and veil, she asked Xiao Cheng to step down from the carriage for a word. Xiao Cheng patted my hand and said, "Come with me." I looked troubled. This doesn't seem quite appropriate. As husband and wife, we are one. Some things should be heard together. I followed along, and Yi Qianna's face showed a mix of shame and anger. "Why must you bring her here to humiliate me?" I was completely baffled. "Miss Yi, if you have something to say, speak quickly. I still have to hurry on my way to the southern border." A smug expression appeared on Yi Chen's face. "Xiao Cheng, do you regret now refusing to marry me back then? Without my help, you've ended up in such a state." She looked me up and down with a disdainful gaze. "You rejected me, just to marry such a pretty face. You truly have no eye for talent." I was happily enjoying the drama on the side. So Xiao Cheng and the female lead had such a history. It's just this, no personal attacks. Okay. Xiao Cheng shielded me behind him, his expression blank, his tone cold. "Yes, I do have feelings for Qingqing, no matter what she's like." "You," Yi Chen's face flushed with anger. "I only said one thing. And you're already protecting her like this." Her sinister gaze fell on me. "Xiao Cheng, you have no power. Let's see how you can protect her. Sooner or later, you'll come begging to me." With that, she stormed off. I was left with a face full of confusion. The carriage traveled beyond the capital's boundaries. Yet Xiao Cheng remained as unemotional as ever. I was growing increasingly anxious inside. "Are you really going to the southern border? What exactly are your plans?" "Qingqing, don't worry. No matter what, I will protect you." I punched him in the chest. "At a time like this, you're still saying useless things." Xiao Cheng reached out and wrapped his hand around my fist, pulling me into his embrace. "It's just a show for that one above." Xiao Cheng pointed his index finger upward, and I understood instantly. Doesn't he enjoy watching the Crown Prince and I fight? We'll put on a performance for him. Those who died in this autumn hunt were all the spies he placed around the Crown Prince. Of course he's angry. A mocking smile tugged at the corner of Xiao Cheng's lips. I widened my eyes in disbelief. "So, you and the Crown Prince are openly at odds, but secretly cooperating?" Xiao Cheng nodded. "To be precise, I'm helping him ascend to the throne, and in return, he's promised me something else." I blinked my eyes. Now I'm confused. "The rumors in the streets say you fought fiercely with the Crown Prince for the throne." Xiao Cheng laughed. "It was just a smokescreen, to fool that one. You really don't want to sit on that throne." Xiao Cheng's smile faded, a trace of sorrow flashing in his eyes. "What's so good about that position? A lonely ruler, all alone. My mother was deeply devoted to him, yet in the end, she was left utterly broken. When I was young, I too once admired and looked up to him. But in order to consolidate his imperial power, he orchestrated many schemes, pitting me against the Crown Prince. I reached out and embraced Xiao Cheng, comforting him. "You have me." I always felt that something was off about everything, but I just couldn't figure out where to start. "System, are you there? You've been unusually quiet lately. Is there something troubling you?" Calling out to the system in my mind, it took a long time before it replied. "Master, I've encountered something major," the system stammered, and my heart tightened with anxiety. "I'm not a romance system." "What do you mean?" "It's just that what I produce isn't a love-addled divine elixir." "You useless system. It took you over a decade to realize you're not a romance system." I cursed the system wildly in my heart, my breathing growing ragged. Xiao Cheng stood by, stifling laughter as he patted my back to help me catch my breath. "Although I am not a romance system, I am a longevity system, and what I produce is the longevity pill. Get out." And as I calmed down, I also realized where that sense of unease had come from. I glared fiercely at Xiao Cheng, still not telling the truth. Xiao Cheng poured a cup of tea and handed it to me. "Calm down, Tilda," he sighed, his face full of doting affection. "Truly, like master, like system." I showed an expression of realization. "So, you've known my secret all along. You can even hear my thoughts." Xiao Cheng nodded. "When I was 5 years old, I sneaked out of the palace and ran into your parents taking you out for a stroll. I discovered I could hear the voice in your heart. What an interesting girl. Your parents dote on you. Your family's bond is truly wonderful. It makes me envious." After that, I snuck out of the palace to see you every year. The older you grew, the more clever and quirky you became, yet you put on such a proper act whenever outsiders were around. Back then, I thought to myself, how interesting it would be to spend a lifetime with a girl like that. A brilliant smile spread across Xiao Cheng's face as he kissed my forehead. "Thank goodness I married you, you." I stared at him in disbelief. "You had your eyes on me that early?" Xiao Cheng nodded. I got up from his embrace and sat to the side. Let me sort this out. So, first, the love-addled brain divine pill is fake. Second, you can hear my inner thoughts. Third, you've liked me for a long time. Xiao Cheng nodded with affection. Oh my god, what is all this? I fell backward, and Xiao Cheng caught me precisely. So I know Qingqing wanted to use the love-struck elixir to change my mind, to keep me from participating in the struggle for the throne. Xiao Cheng wrapped his arms around my waist, nuzzling my ear. I also know that you often think about this piece of sturdy meat of mine. My face instantly flushed with embarrassment. I haven't paid any attention to Xiao Cheng for several hours, yet he shamelessly came over. Aren't you curious about Yi Qian'er, Qingqing? My curiosity was piqued. Probably because I transmigrated into the book. The plot has completely gone off the rails. If you want to talk, I'll listen. If you don't, I'm not particularly interested either, I replied with a haughty tone. Alright, it's me who wants to tell you that Yi Qian'er, I don't know what she sees in me, but she secretly asked her aunt, the imperial consort, to have the emperor arrange a marriage. I've long had feelings for you, so of course I refused. I originally intended to spare her some dignity by sending a message to explain that I already have someone I care for. Who would have thought she'd try to force the issue? So, I devised a plan and shifted the matter onto the crown prince. Xiao Cheng looked at me with a pitiful expression, his eyes pleading. I cleared my throat lightly. Poor crown prince, so devoted to her, wearing that green hat. Xiao Cheng sneered. What true feelings exist in the royal family? I glanced at him, and he quickly corrected himself. Except for me. What deal did you make with the crown prince? Marry you. You are the legitimate daughter of the Minister of State, and marrying you is no easy task. If I hadn't agreed to the crown prince's autumn hunt, he would have surely done everything in his power to obstruct it. But weren't you and I married by the emperor's decree, that still required the crown prince's faction to push for it? Our emperor cannot bear to see any prince gain the support of his ministers. The art of ruling, he wields it masterfully. I rubbed my temples. It's too complicated. I can't understand it. Xiao Cheng seized the opportunity to pull me into his embrace. You don't need to think about it. Leave those complicated, messy matters to me. Just read the storybooks you love, write the tales you enjoy, and be the top talent at the Xiaoxiang Pavilion. Me, it's all true. There's no way to argue against it. On the way to the southern border, we encountered several assassination attempts, all of which were eliminated by Xiao Cheng. He held me close. Are you afraid, Qingqing? I shook my head. Ever since I married him, I knew the future would be like walking on thin ice. Who sent all these people? The crown prince, Xiao Cheng sneered. He wants me dead, but does he think that one would agree? That one sent me to the southern border precisely to consolidate military power. Finally, we arrived in southern Xinjiang. The borderlands are harsh, yet they possess a unique beauty of their own. Apart from the dryness, I adapted quite well. Xiao Cheng became busy as soon as he arrived here, leaving early and returning late, and I also want to do something for him. System, are you sure you're currently a longevity system, producing longevity pills? I looked skeptical. After all, the useless system is quite muddle-headed. Absolutely certain and sure. Although the frontier economy is not as prosperous as the capital, there are still many wealthy local gentry. With wealth comes the desire for a longer life. I changed my name and disguised myself, taking the longevity elixir to auction. I even had an elderly man, who was barely breathing, try it on the spot. The old man immediately stood up on his own and downed several cups of wine in a frenzy. The longevity pill was auctioned off for a sky-high price. I also published many novels under the pen name of the nameless recluse at the bookstore, such as The War God Prince Falls in Love with Me, which sold like hotcakes. Almost every young lady secretly bought a copy. When Xiao Cheng returned to the mansion, I was sitting on the bed counting my silver, laughing wildly. He shook his head helplessly. If I ever become a commoner in the future, I'll have to rely on my wife to support me. I patted his shoulder. No problem, no problem. The borderlands were remote, with high mountains and distant waters, and no familiar faces around, so I lived quite freely. But the day to return to the capital would always come. A message arrived from the capital. The emperor was critically ill and had specially summoned Xiao Cheng back to the capital. I only know that dangers lie ahead. Along the way, we were pursued relentlessly, with no end in sight. Xiao Cheng even got injured while saving me. I cried until my eyelids were swollen. Don't cry. It hurts me to see you like this, I sniffled, holding back my tears. Can't we just give up the fight for the throne, hand over our military power, and live as idle princes? Is that not allowed either? Xiao Cheng laughed with bitter irony. Ching, sometimes our very existence is a thorn in someone else's side. Upon arriving in Kyoto, the emperor was already on the verge of death. The male lead, the crown prince, and the female lead, now the crown princess, had long been waiting outside the hall. Upon seeing us, their faces turned ashen, yet they wore hypocritical smiles. Second brother, you have finally returned. We encountered assassins on the road and were on the brink of death. The ministers kept their eyes downcast. Only my father slightly raised his head to look at me, his face full of concern. The crown prince raised his hand, and the imperial guards surrounded us. Second brother, I fear that some may take advantage of the situation to cause trouble. Taking precautions in advance shouldn't be a problem, right? Xiao Cheng nodded with a smile. I held his hand. No matter what, I am here. During this time, I spent a fortune to hire top experts from the martial world, ensuring that if any danger arises, they would protect our lives at all costs. Now that the experts were standing by our side, I felt a bit more at ease. Xiao Cheng gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. Sure enough, as the funeral bell tolled, the crown prince couldn't wait to have us killed, before the experts could strike back. Another group surrounded the imperial guards and the crown prince, and the imperial guards by the crown prince's side instantly turned against him. I was utterly bewildered. Xiao Cheng winked at me and whispered in my ear, General Qin, the commander of the imperial guards, is one of my men, the kind of friend you'd trust with your life. So, how are you going to wrap things up today? I asked. The atmosphere was tense, with swords drawn and bows bent, yet Xiao Cheng remained calm and unhurried. Ching, do you wish to ascend to the highest throne with me, or live a simple life in obscurity? No matter what, I will protect you. I gripped his hand tightly. That's the matter of imperial succession, yet you make it sound so simple. Xiao Cheng sneered. The imperial throne is nothing more than that. I glanced at my father in the crowd, then looked at Xiao Cheng, pondering for a moment. Empress, I've never been one before, but you must promise me, the harem can only have me. If you ever take someone else in the future, I'll leave you and go find 8 or 10 handsome men. The more I spoke, the darker Xiao Cheng's expression grew. He said fiercely, I'll deal with you when we get back tonight. In truth, I understood clearly only by ascending to that highest position could Xiao Cheng fully protect our loved ones. For a commoner, to speak of protection, how could it ever be easy? My future is also a gamble, betting that Xiao Cheng will not change his heart. What followed went surprisingly smoothly. The chief eunuch by the emperor's side stepped forward and announced that the imperial edict had passed the throne to Xiao Cheng. Whether it was true or false no longer mattered. Xiao Cheng ascended the throne, and I was named empress. The male lead, the crown prince, voluntarily requested to guard the imperial mausoleum. I knew he was being imprisoned. The female lead, the crown princess, fell gravely ill and died on the way to the imperial mausoleum. The ending of the male and female leads in the book turned out to be like this. Truly lamentable. Xiao Cheng was very busy. I asked him if he needed to take some concubines into the harem to balance the various factions at court. He shot me a glare. Ching, don't tease me. If you're bored, go update your storybooks. There are plenty of people waiting for them outside. You. Xiao Cheng didn't even lift his eyelids, his gaze still fixed on the memorial in his hand. I don't need those methods. With my abilities, I can handle both internal and external affairs. I gave him a thumbs up, only then did he shift his gaze from the memorial to look at me. Be good, if you're really bored, go out of the palace to have some fun. Don't worry, I'll send people to protect you. I propped my chin on my hand and looked at him. Don't you need me, as your empress, to do anything? Xiao Cheng smiled and said, no need. As long as you are happy every day and have the energy to do what you want. That is enough. I couldn't hold back the smile on my lips, and I ran over in a few quick steps to hug Xiao Cheng and give him a kiss. His gaze instantly deepened, and I quickly jumped away. I'm going home for a while. Your Majesty, you can get back to your work. Don't call me Your Majesty, call me husband. I don't like those cold, formal titles. I curved the corners of my lips into a smile. Ever since we first met, Xiao Cheng has always referred to himself as I in front of me. Perhaps this is his own unique kind of romance. No matter how the world changes, he bears the burden, while I live carefree behind him. Back at the minister's residence, my mother was resting in the courtyard, and my father was painting her portrait beside her. Seeing me return, my mother said she would personally cook a few of my favorite dishes. I crept up to my father stealthily and stammered, "Dad, do you remember when I was little, there was a time when you were infatuated with a courtesan?" My father was so startled that he dropped the pen in his hand. He quickly covered my mouth and looked around nervously. After confirming that no one was around, he let out a long sigh of relief and finally released me. "Do you want to get your father killed? Why bring up the one thing that shouldn't be mentioned?" Ever since the system told me that the so-called love-addled brain elixir was actually the longevity pill, I've been extremely curious about how my father came to change his ways and devote himself wholeheartedly to my mother. "Father, what is the secret to the harmony between you and mother all these years?" My father, at his age, sighed deeply to the sky, looking somewhat pained. "That matter with the courtesan was nothing but a fabrication from the start. I was merely enduring humiliation to carry out my duty and investigate the affair. Somehow it reached your mother's ears, and I nearly lost half my life." I opened my mouth wide. "My mother is that fierce. Did she hit you?" My father waved his hand. "Let's not talk about it anymore. Let's not talk about it. The past is too painful to look back on." No matter how I tried to pry, my father wouldn't say a word. I had no choice but to ask my mother. My mother looked smug. "Men, they need to be trained. 3 days without a beating, and they'll be climbing up to tear the roof tiles off." "Mom, did you really hit Dad?" My mother cleared her throat lightly. "Not exactly. I just found something uneven for him to kneel on." I roughly understood it was like kneeling on a keyboard or a durian. My mother leaned closer to me and whispered in my ear, "With men, you have to give them a slap first, then offer a little sweetness." My mother looked somewhat awkward, pausing for a few breaths before continuing. "Besides, you have to wear him out completely, so he won't have the energy to think about going elsewhere." I instantly understood. I gave my mother a thumbs up. "Brilliant, you're a master." But this trick wouldn't work on Xiao Cheng. I was always the one trying to run away. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I have been granted a marriage. My betrothed is the heir of the Duke of Zhonghua, Guci, the famously unattainable flower of the capital. Overnight, I became the object of envy and resentment among the noble ladies of the capital. But only I know that this marriage is nothing but a gilded facade, because Guci has someone in his heart, the kind he yearns for but cannot have. How would I know? I have the omniscient perspective. But why is he not going to comfort his unattainable love, and instead pestering me every day? "Your Highness, the noble consort's people are still waiting outside." I clutched my collar tightly, my voice trembling as I spoke. Guci's face flushed crimson, his gaze fixed intently on me. "They have already been sent away, my lady. Let us continue." On the day the imperial decree was announced, the entire Jiang household was filled with joy. Father was so excited that he stroked his goatee, his hand trembling behind his back. Mother also walked briskly toward the small prayer hall. "Everyone is very satisfied with this marriage, except for me." "Why?" "Because I transmigrated into a book. As long as you behave properly and don't harbor any delusions, I will grant you the honor of being the wife of the heir. Otherwise, don't blame me for turning ruthless." After saying this, Guci turned and left the bridal chamber, leaving Jiang Wen alone to weep until dawn. This is how the book describes Jiang Wan's wedding night. At this moment in the bridal chamber, I sit in the center of the wedding bed, the bright red veil hanging down to my chest. Creaked the door to the bridal chamber finally moved. I immediately straightened my posture. "Hurry up, let's finish the lines and wrap this up." Suddenly, The weight on my head lifted as the red veil was lifted away, the light of the candle flame struck straight into the eyes. When he looked up again, a man stood before him. The man had sharp brows and bright eyes, his phoenix-like gaze slightly narrowed, dressed in a bright red wedding robe. Even someone who was usually aloof and self-possessed was tinged with a hint of worldly warmth, truly worthy of being the male lead's rival. This face lives up to the title of the male lead's rival. I don't know if it's because I'm so hungry that my vision is blurry, but I feel like he's in a rather good mood right now. With even the tips of his eyebrows carrying a hint of warmth, gurgle, a dull thud shattered the silence of the room. Hungry, that was my oversight. His tone carried genuine apology as he turned and called out to the door, "Bring in the meal." Embarrassed? Not a chance. I'm not embarrassed, it's others who should be. Ignoring Guci's stifled laughter, I plopped down at the dining table. After a few bites of food, I finally felt like I had come back to life. Looking up, I happened to meet Guci's gaze. The warmth in the corners of his eyes seemed to have deepened a little more. With my appetite satisfied and the meal finished, I set down my chopsticks and was about to stand up. "Let's drink the wedding cup," Guci spoke softly from across the table, a hint of barely noticeable laughter trailing in his tone. I paused for a moment, then glanced down at the table. The bowls and chopsticks on the table had been cleared away at some point, leaving only 2 red-glazed wine cups. As the wine slid down my throat, I couldn't help but wonder, was this part in the book? The meal was eaten, the wine was drunk, now it was time for the main event. I stared unblinkingly at Guci, waiting for him to finish his lines so we could wrap things up. However, Guci suddenly let out a low chuckle. He began to leisurely untie the sash of his outer robe. As his collar loosened slightly, he lifted his gaze to me, a hint of amusement still shimmering in his eyes. "It's my fault for making my wife wait so impatiently. Aren't you supposed to tell me not to daydream, then slam the door and leave? Why aren't you following the script? The key is, how am I supposed to respond?" I was frantically complaining in my heart. And when I looked up again, I felt a sudden warmth in my nose. Guci stripped down to just his undergarments, revealing an exceptionally fine physique, broad shoulders, a narrow waist, long legs, 8-pack abs, plus 2 sexy lines of the Adonis belt. Ah, is this something I can watch without paying? I quickly turned my face away, but my ears betrayed me by growing warm. What are you doing taking your clothes off?" I raised my voice, trying to sound a bit more imposing, yet I couldn't quite hide the tremor in my tone. Guci chuckled softly, his cool voice tinged with a husky undertone. "My lady, a moment of spring night is worth 1,000 pieces of gold." Before the words had fully faded, his palm had already settled on my shoulder, a warm breath drifting over. "Let us do something meaningful." A hand pressed lightly on my shoulder, the force not heavy, yet carrying an undeniable insistence. Before I could even struggle free, my back was already pressed against the soft bedding. I raised my hands to push him, but he remained as immovable as Mount Tai, only his Adam's apple rolling ever so slightly, and then my wrist was gently grasped by him. When his gaze fell upon me, his eyelashes cast a small shadow beneath his eyes, his dark pupils deep and unfathomable, breaths intertwined, carrying a cautious sense of exploration. The touch of our lips was light, so light that I could even feel the faint tremor of his eyelashes brushing against my cheek. My mind went blank for a moment, and by the time I thought to turn my head away, he had already deepened the kiss. As my consciousness began to sink, a thought crossed my mind. Did I read a fake book? The lingering passion continues. "My lady, does this feel good? How about this? Shut up. So much nonsense." I gritted my teeth, holding back the rest of my complaint. My temper flared, rising half a foot high, and I suddenly bit down hard on his lips. A low, hoarse chuckle escaped his throat. "So it turns out my lady likes it this way." The storm raged all night, and the crabapple petals outside the window grew even more crimson under the soaking rain. When daylight broke, Guci, dressed in his bright red wedding robe with his hair meticulously styled, had regained his usual aloof and composed demeanor. I sat before the bronze mirror, supporting my sore and weary waist as I did my makeup, all the while inwardly venting my frustrations. Where's the promised devoted second male lead? The character's personality has completely collapsed. Your Highness, it was Guci's personal attendant, Qing Jian. Guci glanced at me, then stood up and walked to the corridor. A sudden flash of inspiration struck. I know how to answer this. The White Moonlight heroine has an appointment, and Guci is about to go meet her. The book mentioned that on her wedding night, Jiang Wn was left alone all night, and the next day, when she served tea alone, she was deliberately made things difficult by the elders of the Gu family. From then on, she was mocked by everyone in the Duke's household, became the laughingstock of the entire capital, could never hold her head high again, and eventually died of depression. Just as her mind was wandering with wild thoughts, the two men's conversation drifted intermittently from beneath the corridor. Your Highness, her ladyship has sent a message. Qing Jian's voice carried a hint of cautious hesitation. Go and decline it. From now on, let her make her own decisions in such matters. Now that I am married, I cannot continue to worry about her every little thing as I did before. Do not send any more letters in the future. The last few words were spoken softly, yet carried an unyielding sense of distance. What's going on? How dare he draw a clear line with the female lead? This is not how a male supporting character should behave. My lady, if you are ready. Let us go over. Guci's voice interrupted my train of thought. I abruptly looked up and met his gaze in the mirror. I had long mustered the courage to face the torment of the Gu family elders. This guy is deviating from the script again, but unexpected as it was, having him standing by my side during the tea ceremony gave me an invisible boost of confidence. As I took my seat, seeing the approval in the eyes of the elders in the hall, it seemed I had firmly secured my position as the wife of the heir. I stole a glance at the person beside me, grateful for his seemingly casual actions. But why had he deviated from his character? After returning to my room, I sat amidst a pile of greeting gifts. Look at this. This imperial green jade bracelet, conservatively estimated, must be worth at least 5,000 taels of silver. Ah, what's this thin thing? A 5,000 tael silver note. Heavens above. Is this wave of heavenly wealth finally going to come my way? I couldn't put down that pair of green jade bracelets. In modern times, I could only gaze at them longingly through glass display cases. I was so captivated that I didn't notice Guci's thoughtful gaze. That day, as I yawned while holding a book, I nearly dropped it on my face when I caught sight of the moon-white figure in the corridor from the corner of my eye. Why is Guci here again? As someone who transmigrated into this book, I know full well the ironclad rule that the second male lead belongs to the female protagonist. Ever since I received the imperial decree, I've set 3 principles for myself. Don't draw attention, don't get involved in the affairs between the second male lead and the female protagonist, and quietly wait for the second male lead to divorce me for his white moonlight, so I can take my dowry and run. But ever since our wedding night, Guci has been acting strange. He shows not the slightest intention of remaining chaste for the female lead, fierce and relentless in bed, gentle and considerate out of it, leaving me with sore back and weak legs all day long. My lady, the Osmanthus cakes you love are here, fresh out of the oven. He walked in carrying the food box, his eyes lighting up when he saw me. You've gone to so much trouble, my lord, I replied dryly, just about to find an excuse to retreat to the inner chamber when my wrist was gently grasped. His fingertips were slightly cool, but his grip was very light. You always avoid me. Guci's voice lowered slightly, carrying a hint of barely noticeable grievance. Did I do something wrong? I nearly choked on my own saliva. Bro, don't you realize how clingy you are? No, my lord, you worry too much. I tried to withdraw my hand, but it wouldn't budge. I picked out something for you, my lady. See if you like it. With that, he pulled a brocade box from his sleeve. Just by looking at the packaging, you could tell it wasn't something ordinary inside. I immediately sat back down obediently. Who would turn down money? When the brocade box was opened, the gilded light nearly dazzled my eyes. It is a vermilion gold and kingfisher feather hairpin, with pearls the size of rice grains adorning the phoenix's tail feathers, rustling softly when shaken. Just as my fingertips brushed against the tassels of the hairpin, I heard him whisper, "Last time." I noticed you staring at the kingfisher feather jewelry in the shop, so I specially had someone modify it to match the style. The phoenix's eyes are set with pigeon's blood rubies, which complement your complexion even more. I hope it meets your satisfaction." I gently picked up the hairpin and held it against my temple, feigning reserve as I said, "Not bad." He chuckled softly, took the hairpin, and carefully inserted it into my hair, as he withdrew his hand. His fingertip brushed against my earlobe, sending a tingling sensation through me. "You were lamenting that the material for the phoenix's eyes wasn't chosen well. You even ate a few bites less at dinner." I was taken aback for a moment, gazing at his face so close to mine, and suddenly felt a bit lost. "Why are you so attentive to me? You clearly have someone you love, yet you still shower me with attention, so fickle and two-faced. You're just a big scoundrel." The Mid-Autumn Palace banquet was in full swing, with gilded candlelight casting a shimmering glow throughout the hall. I sat at the banquet, my fingertips lightly tapping the jade cup, my peripheral gaze fixed on the legendary white moonlight imperial consort Xiao Ninga. She wore a crimson palace gown, a delicate begonia flower pinned at her temple, her eyes and brows exuding a captivating charm. Among the palace consorts, she truly possessed an aura that was unforgettable at first glance. I instinctively stole a glance at Guci. The main event was about to begin. In the original story, during this banquet, Guci followed Xiao Ninga into the imperial garden. The two of them embraced each other, weeping bitterly as they poured out the pain of their separation. As for me, I had to hide behind the rockery, shedding silent tears. Being the one who was out of place, I kept an eye on the two of them, ready at any moment to step in and play the role of a mere tool. But I waited and waited. And for a long time, I didn't see the two of them get up and leave. Guci was lowering his head to peel an orange for me, his slender fingers stained with orange juice, gleaming white like jade. He brought the peeled orange segment to my lips, his voice gentle. "Try it, it's sweet." I looked at the orange segment so close at hand, then glanced at Xiao Ninga, who was frequently looking over from not far away, and decided to actively advance the plot, clearing my throat lightly. "It seems the noble consort has something to discuss with you. Aren't you going to greet her?" He gave a non-committal but his hands didn't stop moving. He peeled another segment and handed it over. "Finish eating first, then we'll talk." Xiao Ninga clearly saw this too, holding her wine glass. She raised it in a distant toast toward our direction, her gaze darkening slightly. Guci didn't even lift an eyelid, focusing entirely on serving me food, shrimp peeled and deveined, fish meticulously picked clean of bones, as if, among all the guests in the grand hall, I were the only one who existed. As I chewed on the orange, alarms blared in my mind. Was he deliberately using me to provoke his white moonlight? Scumbag. Suddenly, a palace maid accidentally spilled tea, wetting the hem of Guci's robe. "Please forgive me, Your Highness. This servant deserves death." The palace maid hurriedly begged for forgiveness. "Please follow this servant to change your clothes." Guci rose with a gloomy expression and left the main hall. Not long after, Xiao Ninga also stood up and departed. Finally, it was my turn, the tool character, to make an entrance. Behind the rockery, I indeed witnessed the classic scene of unforgettable old affections. Xiao Ninga saw Guci, her eyes instantly reddening, her voice choked with tears. "Aki, are you really going to ignore me? You clearly still have me in your heart." Guci remained silent for a moment, his voice as cold as frost under the moonlight. "Since your ladyship has entered the palace to serve His Majesty, you should abide by the palace rules. I, as a subject, have also married and started a family, and must uphold the duties of a husband." Upon hearing this, Xiao Ninga burst into tears, her tone filled with disbelief. "I don't believe you've forgotten our past." Guci raised his hand, as if wanting to wipe away her tears. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. Here it comes. Here it comes. As expected, old feelings are hard to sever, but in the next moment, his hand paused mid-air, and he instead pulled a handkerchief from his sleeve. I focused my gaze and nearly jumped out from behind the rockery. Wasn't that the handkerchief I had ruined with my embroidery last night? The mandarin duck's wings were crooked and had a hole in them, so I casually tossed it onto the dressing table. To think he had picked it up. My wife's embroidery skills are still rudimentary, and the handkerchief is rather crudely made. I hope your highness will not laugh at it. His tone was calm, without the slightest ripple, as if he were speaking of the most ordinary matter. Xiao Ninga stood frozen in place, the tears on her face forgotten. I froze too, had the plot derailed again. Rubbing my numb legs from squatting too long, I shakily rose to my feet. As I turned my head, a dark figure appeared before me, startling me so much I nearly screamed. Guci crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow as he looked at me. My lady, squatting here like this, are you? I awkwardly waved my paw, trying to brush it off. What a coincidence. Husband, are you also out for some fresh air? In the carriage on the way back to the estate. The interior was so quiet you could hear each other's breathing. Guci suddenly spoke up. My lady, don't you have anything to ask? I immediately chimed in. Yes, husband. What is your relationship with Her Highness? He lowered his gaze to look at me, then suddenly reached out and took my hand. She was my former fiancée. Why wasn't this part written in the plot? After I went missing on the battlefield, she entered the palace and became a consort. Could it be that she was forcibly taken by the emperor? I originally thought she was forced, but I only learned recently that she voluntarily requested to enter the palace. If that's the case, why in the original plot did Guci join forces with Xiao Ninga to poison the emperor and become the regent himself? My lady, his voice was low, carrying a tone of seriousness. From now on, there will be no more connection between her and me. Suddenly, Guci placed my hand over his heart. In here. There is only you, my lady. The warm sensation spread, and my face flushed instantly, even my ears burning with heat. I lowered my gaze. Can I trust you, Guci? Before I knew it, the new year was approaching, with the palace banquet approaching once again. Could the female lead really be willing to let go of Guci, such a convenient tool? As expected, at the palace banquet, my clothes were accidentally stained by a palace maid, just as I had anticipated. Madam, please allow this servant to take you to change your clothes. The palace maid in pink attire pleaded for forgiveness. I instantly became alert and sternly refused her. No need, but she persisted, refusing to give up, and began to sob softly, drawing the attention of those around us. Let's go. I knew I couldn't remain in this stalemate any longer, so I mustered all my focus and followed her out of the palace hall. The lanterns along the corridor flickered, casting the maid's shadow long and wavering. What trick would come next, accusing me of having an affair? The palace maid kept her head lowered, her expression unreadable. As we reached the corner of the corridor, the armor of the guards on both sides gleamed coldly under the palace lanterns. I suddenly halted, and the maid stumbled in her steps, her fingers instinctively twisting the cuffs of her sleeves. You may go. I raised my hand to hold down the hair at my temples. Tousled by the night breeze, my gaze sweeping past the saber at the guard's waist. I'll just stay here and enjoy the wind for a while. Hearing this, she abruptly looked up, her face showing urgency. Madam, the place to change clothes hasn't been reached yet. No need, I interrupted her, lightly tapping my fingertips on the cool stone railing. The damp clothes, stirred by the wind, carried a crisp chill. This night breeze is just right. It'll dry in a quarter of an hour. But you. Step back. I turned my face to the side, my gaze colliding directly with the panic in her eyes. What lay hidden there was not just alarm, but also a trace of barely restrained urgency. Though the two guards kept their eyes lowered, their ears were unmistakably twitching. Madam, her voice trembled. But after glancing at the guards on either side, she finally turned and walked away. Finding a stone step not far from the guards, I sat down and pulled a pink pouch from the hem of my robe. A faint smile touched my lips as I untied the pouch string with my fingertips and pulled out a piece of beef jerky wrapped in oiled paper. Just as I was chewing with relish, a sudden surge of heat flared up in my lower abdomen. Sure enough, it was that disgusting old trick again. Calmly, I fished out a yellow pouch, took out a black pill, and swallowed it in one gulp. This pill was no ordinary thing. I had bought it at a high price from a renowned doctor, and it could counteract all unknown drugs. In just a moment, That scorching heat receded like it had been doused with cold water. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of the palace maid still lingering not far away, and I leisurely took another bite of the beef jerky, knowing there are tigers in the mountains, yet still heading toward them. That is not my way of doing things. A cannon fodder should have the awareness of cannon fodder, knowing when to back down. I sat right under the guard's watchful eyes and, when the banquet ended, slipped out of the palace unnoticed among the crowd. By the time I returned to the Duke's residence, the fragrance of osmanthus from the eaves had already soaked into the twilight. I placed the palace attire stained with tea on the table. At the palace banquet today, a palace maid spilled tea on me. I removed the jade hairpin from my hair, letting my dark tresses cascade over my shoulders. At first, I thought it was an accident, but I never expected that moments later I would feel a burning heat spreading throughout my body. Guci's fingers paused over the dark, damp stain, his knuckles turning slightly pale. Yet, who stands behind that palace maid? As I finished speaking, I noticed his jawline growing even more taut, with so many eyes watching at the palace banquet. How dare they make a move? Guci's tone carried a barely suppressed edge of ferocity. The candlelight cast deep shadows in his eyes, and his usually cool, detached features now seemed coated with a thin layer of frost. You have suffered, my lady. I will certainly give you an explanation for this matter. Guci's voice was as heavy as if soaked in ink. I looked at his tense jawline and suddenly smiled. At this moment, the surging anger in his eyes seemed to carry a hint of genuine sincerity. You are so thoughtful. My husband, if it truly turns out to be that noble consort who tampered with things, how would he handle it? Whether he has truly severed ties with his first love or is merely putting on a show will soon become clear. Madam, great news. The voice of my personal maid, Xiaotsue, was brimming with irrepressible excitement. Her face flushed as she exclaimed, Third Master has been transferred to the Ministry of Personnel as a Vice Minister. My hand, holding the celadon teacup, paused for a moment, and my heart skipped a beat. Is it true? I looked up at Xiaotsue. Third brother, got promoted. In the original book, this highly sought-after position ultimately ended up in the hands of the imperial consort's younger brother. Madam, see if you like this. Guci magically produced a small trinket from his sleeve, a little squirrel holding a golden pearl, with crushed diamonds embedded in its tail, small and exquisite. This is to amuse the lady, when bored on ordinary days. Just rub it for fun. The squirrel's ears were carved from rose quartz, the cool sensation spreading up from the fingertips. The palace maid who fell into the water and drowned on the night of the palace banquet. The lead is broken. His voice was low, carrying a complex mix of emotions in its tone. Hearing this, my fingers, which had been stroking the squirrel's ears, paused. Some debts, once they involve that person, may not be so easily settled. It's just that the little squirrel, which had seemed so adorable moments ago, now felt rather dull and uninteresting to look at. After a moment of silence, Guci's gaze sharpened. Nevertheless, it was ultimately the noble consort's negligence. I have already reprimanded her. Such incidents will definitely not happen again. Then he paused, his eyes returning to me, softening with a touch of gentleness. As for the grievances my lady has suffered, they must naturally be made up for. A few days ago, the Ministry of Personnel submitted a vacancy for a vice minister position, and I have already secured it for third brother. With that, he raised his teacup to his lips, not truly drinking, but merely stealing a glance at me from behind it. Watching his ears perking up stealthily and the overly bright gleam in his eyes, I cleared my throat and spoke. Thank you, my husband. Do you find me particularly pleasing to the eye today? He suddenly leaned in, his nose almost touching my forehead, his warm breath falling on my brow. My husband is exceptionally wise and valiant every single day. I coughed twice, trying to create some distance. I just remembered there's something I haven't finished. With that, I stood up and hurried out of the door. I had to stay away from that male fox spirit, lest he bewitch my already wavering mind. Behind me, the man watched my flustered figure with eyes full of amusement. At the Buddhist temple in the outskirts of the city, I followed my mother-in-law to offer incense. The night wind in the mountains is exceptionally cold. I sat in the room, resting my chin in my hands as I gazed at the night outside, admiring the unpolluted night sky, lost in my own thoughts. I didn't notice the wisps of white smoke drifting in through the crack in the door. When I woke again, my wrists were bound behind my back in a stone chamber. I struggled to twist my body, the rough rope rubbing against my wrist bones, sending waves of sharp pain. Is anyone there? Where is this? But no matter how much I shouted until my throat was raw, I received no response at all. Time passed minute by minute, second by second, the stone chamber so quiet I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat. My throat gradually grew dry and painful. My stomach began to rumble. Hunger and thirst were like two invisible hands, tightly gripping my lifeline. I leaned against the stone wall, gasping for breath, my vision starting to blur. Better to have been hit by a car like in my past life, I murmured to myself, my eyelids heavy as if filled with lead, the last shred of consciousness swallowed by darkness. At the edge of consciousness, the sound of tap, tap, tap footsteps seemed to echo in my ears. In the darkness, water entered my mouth, finally soothing the painful dryness in my throat. When I opened my eyes again, what greeted me was not the cold stone walls, but the familiar azure-colored bed curtains. Is this a room in the Duke's residence? I struggled to lift my wrist, where only faint marks remained from the rope burns. Was I saved? Madam, you're awake, a familiar voice sounded in my ear, trembling with barely concealed ecstasy. I slowly turned my head and saw Guci striding quickly from the table. Stopping at the bedside, he cautiously extended his hand, as if wanting to touch me, yet paused mid-air, his fingertips trembling slightly. A moment later, he gently grasped my wrist, his thumb tenderly caressing the faint rope marks on my skin. You're finally awake. His voice was filled with the relief of having survived a disaster, and his eyes were even slightly reddened. If you hadn't woken up, what would I have done? Looking at the glimmering light in his eyes, I thought perhaps he truly cared for me. That day, as I was lying under a tree to cool off, I overheard people whispering outside the courtyard wall. Have you heard? The imperial consort who was so favored in the harem has been banished to the cold palace. Indeed, the whole capital is buzzing with the news, saying that consort is a deeply hidden venomous beauty who dared to harm the imperial heir in secret. With a thud, the fan in my hand fell to the ground. Has the female lead storyline also fallen apart? My lady, have some shrimp. I stared at the glistening shrimp meat between Guci's fingertips, instinctively opened my mouth, and swallowed it whole. As I chewed, I wrestled with the dilemma, should I ask or not? Darling, eat your meal properly. Guci's gentle voice sounded by my ear, pulling my wandering thoughts back. I looked down to see the greens in my bowl nearly mashed to a pulp. Wasting food is shameful, especially in an era of scarce resources like ancient times. Let's ask after we finish eating. I picked up my chopsticks and ate quickly, glaring at Guci out of the corner of my eye. What are you looking at? Eat your food. I stammered as I began to speak. You may speak freely, my lady, Guci said with a gentle smile as he looked at me. Then I shall speak my mind. I heard the imperial consort has been confined to the cold palace, I said, all the while observing his expression. Sure enough, at the mention of the imperial consort, Guci's face instantly darkened, as if the very temperature around us had dropped several degrees. Fmh, you scumbag. And you said I was the only one in your heart. Don't mention her. Guci's voice was icy and piercing. Why can't I mention her? Am I not worthy? I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I feel a tightness in my chest, a wave of bitterness washing over my heart. With a sharp crack, the teacup in Guci's hand shattered. If I'm not worthy, then so be it. Merely being consigned to the cold palace, what a lenient punishment for her. Don't worry, my dear, if she dares to harm you, I will make her regret ever crossing you. Wasn't she banished to the cold palace for harming the imperial heir? What does that have to do with me? Unless, I asked, puzzled, could it be, I'm a princess in exile? I tightened my grip on my sleeve, my voice brimming with excitement and delight. So I am. Just as I was getting carried away, I met Guci's teasing yet doting gaze and instantly deflated. I was just joking. Turning around, I pretended to wipe the sweat from my forehead. Can't a person even daydream? After calming my emotions, I sat down opposite Guci again. It was her who kidnapped me. This time, I didn't crack any jokes and spoke with certainty. That's right. She harmed the royal heir and wanted me to help cover it up, but I refused. In a moment of carelessness, she managed to abduct you. After that, I searched for your whereabouts while pretending to help her. I just never expected that she never intended to let you live from the very beginning." As he spoke, he stood up and walked over, reaching out to pull me into his embrace. "Fortunately, I rescued you in time, otherwise I truly don't know what I might have done." Guci's tone was full of relief, with a trace of barely noticeable lingering fear. Feeling the trembling of the body beneath my palm, my eyes suddenly grew hot. "Guci," I called out softly. "I'm here," he responded, his voice filled with concern. I held him tightly with all my strength. "Let's live well together from now on," I murmured. Perhaps I should trust him this once, and give myself a chance too. He didn't say a word, just lowered his head and kissed me. The lips were warm, carrying his unique scent. "I am yours," he whispered. "In this lifetime, I belong only to you." Outside the window, the wind and snow had ceased, and a bright full moon hung high in the sky. Inside the room, red candles flickered, casting a scene of tender and enchanting springtime beauty. Some people, from the very beginning, are destined to be supporting characters in the story. Perhaps he was once a supporting character in someone else's story. But who isn't the protagonist of their own story? Another Mid-Autumn festival arrived, and I was diagnosed with a joyful pulse. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned to look at Guci. He stood frozen in place, his dark hair falling over his eyes as if he hadn't heard clearly. It wasn't until the imperial physician called out "young master" 3 times in a row that he suddenly snapped back to reality and hurried to my side. His Adam's apple bobbed several times before he finally spoke in a hoarse voice. "My dear, we're going to have a child." I had been somewhat nervous myself, but seeing him like that, the tension in my heart instantly melted away. Throughout the entire pregnancy, Guci was extremely nervous, fearing even the slightest mishap, especially as the due date approached. He forbade me from doing this, and that it was truly infuriating. On this day, while he was out, I took my maid to admire the lotus by the river. Walking on the bluestone path, I slipped on some moss and fell. The moment I hit the ground, a classic saying flashed through my mind: "Noswa, no die." I was carried into the delivery room, where the midwives bustled around me, but the child stubbornly refused to make an appearance. As my consciousness began to fade, I suddenly heard Guci's voice, hoarse as if scraped by sandpaper. "Save the mother, no matter what, you must save the consort." When the words "save the mother" struck my ears, tears instantly poured down my face, mingling with the cold sweat on my temples, and somehow gave me the strength to keep fighting. When I woke again, dusk had fallen outside the window, and Guci was keeping vigil by the bedside. His dark brocade robe was crumpled, his chin covered in stubble, and heavy shadows hung beneath his eyes. Seeing me open my eyes, he quickly grasped my hand, his tone unusually gentle. "My dear, you're awake. We have a daughter now, with features that look just like you." My anxious heart finally settled, a slight smile curved my lips, and I drifted back into a deep sleep. Another Chishi festival arrived, with colorful lanterns hanging beneath the grapevines in the courtyard. Our daughter was now able to toddle unsteadily. Seeing Guci return from outside, she stumbled over on her short little legs, threw herself at him, and looked up with her small face, calling out, "Daddy, hug." Guci hurried forward, bent down to pick her up, and planted a kiss on her forehead. He then turned to look at me, his eyes holding scattered stars, his voice gentle. "My lady, the moonlight is especially beautiful tonight. Why don't we take a man to admire the moon in the courtyard?" I smiled and nestled closer to him. Days flowed by slowly in such ordinary yet warm moments. Guci, extra story. Guci has been feeling something off lately. I've noticed that unfamiliar emotions and thoughts keep flashing through my mind uncontrollably. For instance, I only have feelings for my former fiancé, now the imperial consort Xiao Ninga. based on parental arrangements and matchmakers' words, yet there's always a voice in my heart whispering, she is the love of my life, worth protecting with everything I have. For instance, whenever Xiao Ninga wept before me, pouring out her deep affection and the hardships she faced in the palace, an inexplicable wave of pity and reluctance would always surge in my heart, and I would often find myself thoughtlessly agreeing to many of her requests. Yet this sense of pity was utterly unreasonable, for I knew full well she was lying. The calculation in the depths of her eyes was impossible to hide. The true alarm was sounded at the birthday banquet of the Xiao family's matriarch. Guided by the voice in my mind, I should have fallen deeply in love with Xiao Ninga the moment I met her. I should have even disregarded her status as a palace consort and pulled her into my arms. And indeed, events unfolded as expected. As Xiao Ninga passed by me, she accidentally stumbled, falling weakly toward me. I instinctively reached out to steady her, my hand meeting a soft warmth. She lifted her head, revealing that delicate, pitiful face of hers, her eyes shimmering as she timidly called out, "Aki." Her voice was gentle and melodious, stirring the imagination, yet at this moment, my heart was a cold, tranquil stillness. The angle of her fall, the innocent look in her eyes, even the perfectly placed dust on her sleeve, all were as precise as a silent seduction, and I truly couldn't control the urge to pull her into my arms. My face wore an expression of pity and tenderness, but inside, a storm of emotions was raging. Just then, a young girl burst into view. When she saw me, she turned and fled like a startled rabbit. And I finally broke free from the loss of control, pushing Xiao Ninga away with a forceful shove. At the banquet, I unexpectedly spotted the young girl from earlier in the most secluded corner. Before her lay a plate of delicate mung bean cakes. She was carefully picking up a small piece, nibbling at it in tiny bites, her eyes curved into crescents, her expression as content as a cat sneaking a treat. At that moment, a deafening roar exploded in my mind. On one side, a meticulously calculated chance encounter, on the other, a genuinely adorable sneaky snack. The woman quietly enjoying her pastries in the corner was 1,000 times more pleasing to the eye than that insincere Xiao Ninga. I was absolutely certain I did not love Xiao Ninga. Guci, the esteemed heir of the Duke of Zhen, with illustrious military achievements and immense power, had become a mere puppet in my own emotions and life. For the first time, I so clearly wanted to break free from these invisible shackles. I want to personally feel the ones I love, rather than being swayed by a vague and elusive voice. After that, I began to pay attention to that woman, whether intentionally or unintentionally. It turned out she was the youngest legitimate daughter of the Jiang family, appearing dull in public but clever and cunning behind the scenes. It turns out, she values money above all else. It turns out, she is so adorable. Only in places where she is present can I maintain my true self and break free from the shackles. I personally requested the emperor to issue an imperial decree for our marriage. But after marriage, I discovered that she seemed to know something. She always avoided me. When she mentioned Xiao Ninga, it wasn't out of testing or jealousy, but a genuine desire to push me away. She wanted to escape from me. This realization, like a needle, pierced my heart deeply. I couldn't let her continue misunderstanding like this. To be with her, I had finally managed to shake off that elusive voice. I absolutely could not let her slip away from me. Slowly, like the gentle spring rain, I seeped into her life drop by drop, letting her grow accustomed to my presence without even realizing it. And then later, when she actually began to show her true self in front of me, I knew that the high wall between us was slowly crumbling. Hearing her say with her own lips that she wanted to live well with me, I knew I had finally waited for this moment. She had finally fallen into the gentle haven I had carefully woven, and I was willing to spend the rest of my life protecting her and keeping her safe. After hearing the two stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.